The World Health Organization predicts that by 2030, climate change will cause 250,000 deaths per year and cost billions of dollars due to its impact on human health. That's just 10 years from now. Even today, the impact of climate change is felt around the world as heat waves, fires, and severe weather strengthen and become more common. And yet, there's reason to be optimistic. By the end of this presentation, I hope to convince you of that by showing how the climate crisis may be a catalyst for social and moral progress. Awareness of the climate crisis causes anxiety and pessimism. These negative emotions are pretty harmful to mental and physical health, and also a deterrent to action. After studying the impacts of the climate crisis and other environmental problems through philosophy and environmental policy courses, this was certainly something I felt. Still, the climate crisis cannot be ignored. We can't reject the reality of climate change. We can't fix a problem we're not aware of. What we can do, however, is be informed, have a goal, and be optimistic. So first, some reality. These are the planetary boundaries. They reflect the stable conditions of the Holocene, the epoch human civilization has almost exclusively existed in. We know humanity can exist and thrive in these conditions, and that's why they're so important to maintain. The planetary boundaries are like guardrails, stopping motorists from approaching the edge of a cliff. Beyond the planetary boundaries, beyond the guardrails, is the zone of uncertainty. It's like the area between the guardrails and the cliff. Go beyond the zone of uncertainty, and you fall off the cliff, and you may not be able to get back up. As you can see, we're not doing very well, and climate change isn't the only problem either. The influence of human activity on the Earth is so great now that many scientists believe that we've entered a new epoch called the Anthropocene. And again, human civilization has almost exclusively existed in the conditions of the Holocene. This is a long-term threat to humanity. So, given all this, why be optimistic? First, what do I mean by optimism? The optimism I'm advocating for is not this. It's not blind trust that everything will be completely fine when it's clearly not, or blind trust in industrial technology, meaning things like green energy, without the need for social technologies or behavioral changes as well. We have to acknowledge the scope of the problem. The optimism I'm arguing for is this. We should expect to work to make a positive future possible, but also expect that it is possible. One reason to adopt this outlook is that optimism is highly correlated with pro-environmental behavior, good mental health, and good physical health. Optimists tend to believe that more is in their power of control and consequently think more is possible, so they do more. That's what we need to make change. And again, being optimistic is good for your well-being. Another reason to be optimistic is that the climate crisis is an invitation to correct a problem in economic thought, which will in turn help humanity progress towards sustainable well-being for all. Part of the reason we are exceeding the planetary boundaries is because of economic growth. This is something Greta acknowledged in her address to the UN last year.
People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Economic growth means more resources are being consumed by more people. It also means that more greenhouse gases are being pumped into the atmosphere, where habitats are lost to agriculture, and more pollution. This is a symptom of a deeper problem within economics, and that problem is a lack of morality. Political philosophy was once closely tied with economics, but economics eventually became separated from political philosophy. This separation left a moral void with some unfortunate consequences. Economic growth is now taken as a self-explanatory goal by governments around the world. We see this now with the pandemic. It's apparently so important to reopen for the economy, even if the pandemic continues to spread. So important that some governments seem to have forgotten that the economy exists in the first place to support the well-being of its people. This is a theme Kate Raworth explores in Donut Economics. Today, economists and politicians debate with confident ease in the name of economic efficiency, productivity, and growth, as if those values were self-explanatory. while hesitating to speak of justice, fairness, and rights. So we need a new goal, one that isn't economic growth. Climate change is a chance to reintroduce morality into economics and introduce a new goal, one concerned with justice, fairness, and rights. So this is the economic donut developed by Kate Raworth. The donut is a visual representation of social justice, ecological barriers, and the goal of sustainable well-being which fits between them. A shortfall occurs when people don't have access to basic necessities such as food and education. An overshoot occurs when we exceed the planetary boundaries, such as climate change. Our ideal spot is right in the middle of these, where humanity can flourish within the bounds of the planet. Adopting this model is not unrealistic either. Amsterdam just began implementing donut economics. And this is an excellent model to adopt, although it's not ethically complete. It can be taken a step further. I created an ethical donut to help explain the moral reasoning behind the economic donut and add on where I think it falls short. So the donut economics is a combination of goals and rights. The goal is creating a sustainable and just world for humans, which can be achieved by balancing rights to safety and rights to freedom. The idea is that freedom, the expression of our will and reason, is important to well-being and justice, but it's ultimately self-defeating without some limitation. This model is certainly an improvement over our current goal of endless economic growth. However, there's still room for moral improvement. One part of the ethical donut shows a balance between biocentrism and anthropocentrism. Anthropocentrism recognizes inherent value to humans and instrumental value to non-humans, while biocentrism recognizes that all life has inherent value. In the economic donut, only humans have value and a good worth considering. A loss of biodiversity, for example, is bad only because a loss of diversity ultimately harms humans. The actual harm or suffering experienced by non-human organisms in the process of biodiversity loss doesn't matter, simply because those living things aren't humans. Anthropocentrism suggests a vast human superiority over non-humans. Yet humans are vulnerable to and dependent on the environment just like every other living thing. Sure, we're powerful enough to change the environment, but those changes ultimately threaten our own existence. Instead of an anthropocentric view, a biocentric worldview should be adopted. This worldview recognizes that we're part of an interdependent web of life called the biosphere. Once this worldview takes over humans, a worldview of human superiority, a respect for nature can develop. Those with a respect for nature are inclined to protect the good of all members of the biosphere. Not only will this reduce the harm caused to humans, but it also accounts for unknown dependencies, which donut economics might not include. So in donut ethics, all means all life, not just humans. We should seek to make a flourishing biosphere as well as a flourishing human society. This future isn't just going to happen, but we can still be optimistic about its possibility and take action towards making it reality. We can know that we are exceeding the planetary boundaries and recognize what a problem that is. We can identify a new goal of sustainable well-being for all and be optimistic about our ability to achieve that goal. Thank you all for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.